Buenas tardes a todas y a todos. Yo soy Carmen Pérez, soy vicerrectora de Relaciones Institucionales, Igualdad, Cooperación y Desarrollo Sostenible y encargada de la primera parte de esta inauguración. Señor Ministro, Carlos Cuerpo, autoridades académicas, queridos estudiantes, queridas colegas, pues es un placer estar hoy aquí y darle al Ministro y daros a todos y a todas la bienvenida a este evento que es muy especial para nosotros. Será la segunda parte una conversación sobre the Spanish Economic Momentum in Europe y estamos muy orgullosos en la Universidad Carlos III de que este sea uno de los primeros actos que forman parte del programa que estamos preparando y que va a conmemorar el 40 aniversario de la adhesión de España a las entonces comunidades europeas, a la actual Unión Europea. Y esa es una ocasión, la del 40 aniversario, que nos invita a reflexionar y también a celebrar también. La entrada en España o la adhesión de España a la Unión Europea marcó un punto de inflexión en nuestro país, económico, social, pero también democrático, digamos, porque abrió oportunidades, nos ha servido para fortalecer y solidificar derechos y nos ha conectado con un proyecto europeo que es muy amplio y que está basado en la cooperación, en la innovación y en valores que compartimos. Y estas 4 décadas que han pasado también han transformado las universidades españolas y también ha sido especialmente transformador para la Carlos III. Nosotros somos una universidad pública que ha crecido en ese contexto, en el contexto de la Unión Europea. Yo creo que es una universidad que ha abrazado esos valores, la igualdad, la libertad, la democracia, la inclusión y también la excelencia académica. Y además nos hemos beneficiado, la Carlos III en particular se ha beneficiado mucho de los programas y de los partenariados. Por ejemplo, en programas como Erasmus+, que han beneficiado a cientos de nuestros estudiantes que han tenido la oportunidad de vivir experiencias internacionales gracias al programa y somos, de hecho, la universidad líder en España en captación de fondos, digamos, del programa Erasmus. Más de la mitad de los estudiantes de grado, por ejemplo, hacen al menos un semestre fuera durante sus estudios. Y somos un campus muy internacional, o tenemos una universidad muy internacional con cientos de estudiantes que vienen de muchos países todos los años. La Unión Europea también nos ha dado la oportunidad de fortalecer la cooperación académica. Yo creo que un ejemplo muy importante de eso es nuestra pertenencia a YUFE, a la alianza YUFE, de Young Universities for the Future of Europe, que es un ámbito de colaboración muy estrecha y que, por ejemplo, ha fructificado en el lanzamiento este año de un primer grado conjunto en sostenibilidad urbana. Como decía antes, vamos a dedicar el año 2025-2026, el curso académico 2025-2026, a celebrar y a reflexionar sobre el papel de Europa en nuestro futuro y en ese contexto, en el contexto de esa celebración, MACIES ocupa un lugar muy importante, juega un papel central porque es un centro interdisciplinar, todos y todas lo conocéis aquí, un centro interdisciplinar que atrae profesores de otras facultades, pero también de otros países, de muchas disciplinas, que promueve la innovación académica, la investigación y, sobre todo, la adhesión a los valores europeos y a lo que la integración europea representa. Y eso asegura que la cuestión de Europa, además de estar en nuestro compromiso institucional, digamos, esté también en nuestras aulas y en nuestros debates. Así que el evento que hoy celebramos, esa conversación entre el Ministro de Economía y una de las miembros de MACIES, la profesora Natalia Fabra, que además está, como ella sabe, en su casa, significa, ¿no?, lo que queremos ofrecer en ese contexto. Espacios donde lo político y el pensamiento académico se encuentren. Y eso es también Europa. Compartir perspectivas, preguntar y aprender de otras disciplinas. I know the event will be in English, so I will thank you, especially all of you, for being here today, especially the Minister and Natalia Fabra for making time to share this conversation. I invite you all to listen, to question and to take part in today's discussion. Muchas gracias. Le voy a dar la palabra, al director de la Escuela de Postgrado de Economía y Ciencia Política, Antonio Romero. Perdón.
Muchas gracias, Carmen.
Desde hace muy poco.
Thank you, Carmen. Good afternoon, everyone. I will continue in English. It is a pleasure to welcome you to the start of this academic year, because what we celebrate today is the beginning of the academic year for the Graduate School of Economics and Political Science. Let me begin by thanking the Vice Rector, Carmen Perez, Vice Rector for Institutional Relationships, Equality, Cooperation and Sustainable Development, for being here with us. Thank you also to Juan Antonio Mayoral from the Madrid Center of Excellence for Interdisciplinary European Studies at Carlos III, and Deputy Director of the Master in European Economic Governance. Actually, Juan Antonio has led the organization of this event, and he deserves all the credit for that. And I want to thank especially our two guests and panelists, the Minister Carlos Cuerpo, Minister for Economic Trade and Business of the Spanish government. Thank you for your presence and your interest in our school. And Professor Natalia Fabra from CENFI. Natalia is a former colleague of us, and welcome you back, Natalia. Thanks also to the directors and deputy directors of our master program who are here today, to the professors who are actually joining us, and of course, to our guests, and of course, to our students. Welcome you to a new year of study and work, and we aim to help you feel part of a community that will stay with you through this stage and later in your professional career. The school and the university offer many activities across programs. These activities enhance your training, help you meet new people, share ideas, and build connections that will support you now and in the future. In this year, we are using a new format for our opening, and thank you for all being here to celebrate this format with that. We have a master program leading the organization of the event. And the Master in the European Economic Governance has taken the responsibility this year with the leadership of Professor Mayoral, and I want to thank them for the effort and for the care that they put into this event. This new format has a simple goal. It allows each program to present its work and its members, and it helps students to see that they belong to a larger community. We plan for different programs to carry this idea each year and help us welcome the new class. Over time, we hope this can become a shared tradition. Our school continues to grow and move forward. This academic year, we have admitted among you guys, 276 new students, and that brings the totals of our school to more than 400. We maintain a strong mix. Around 70% of our new students come from outside of Spain. This makes our classroom richer and gives us all a wider view of the world. It also shows that public institutions can offer strong programs and attract good students from many countries. This is a good moment to recall that the best reason to support high-quality public higher education is not only the knowledge that it produces, important as it is, but also the capacity to prepare students to face future challenges and to uphold the principle it stands for. A university cannot keep the name university with dignity and let it train both professionals and citizens, fostering shared values such as tolerance and mutual respect. These lessons, always important, are needed to take part in both professional and public life. Thanks again to our guests for sharing this moment with us, especially Minister Cuerpo and Professor Fabra for the enriching conversation that will follow this introductory remark. And to you, our students, welcome to Universidad Carlos III de Madrid. I wish you all a very good academic year. Thank you.
And now, Juan Antonio Mayoral, Deputy Director of the Madrid Center for Interdisciplinary European Studies and Deputy Director of the Master in European Economic Governance, has the floor.
Thank you, Carmen. So it's becoming a very emotional event for many reasons, not only because it was a question of having a lot of people here together, but also is how committed is the people to these new things that are happening. No? Things that have been already advanced by Carmen with the new year in which we are commemorating the 40 years, and also by Antonio just saying that this institution becomes stronger and stronger. And I would like to start by extending our deepest gratitude to every individual involved in this important event. While the Master in European Economic Governance provided a strong push for the opening ceremony, however, I have to admit that we have to emphasize that this initiative is the merit of the entire graduate school, their directors, master programs, and especially the students. So thank you for being here. And as well, the minister's cabinet. So thank you as well for taking the invitation. So events like this are essential forums for discussing highly relevant contemporary issues. And most importantly, the collaborative nature of this ceremony underscores the importance of joint efforts for the public university and our students to excel. Thank you all once again for making this possible. The focus of today's ceremony is the Spanish economic momentum in Europe. It's an important and very relevant topic. As global dynamics continue to evolve, understanding Spanish centrality within the European context is crucial for our students that hopefully, who knows, may become future policy leaders and policymakers. Here we are bringing you some examples of that. To delve into this topic, we have the distinct honor of hosting two highly distinguished speakers. First, we are privileged to welcome Carlos Cuerpo, Minister of Economy, Trade and Business. He holds a bachelor's degree in economics from the University of Extremadura, a master's degree from LSE, and a PhD in economics from the Autonomous University of Madrid. In 2008, he joined the High Corps of Spanish State Economists and Trade Experts. Maybe some of you are already thinking about becoming one of them. If so, just also talk to them, take the time maybe to discuss about that. And since then, he also held relevant positions as economist analyst, director general, deputy director of key national and European institutions. As you can appreciate, the direct involvement in shaping economic policy and his profile as academic offers him a unique perspective on the topic that we are discussing today. We're also delighted to welcome Natalia Fabra, Professor of Economics at Ciencia and member of MACIES, who will share her insights and expertise in this conversation. A distinguished alumna, as already was remarked by Carmen, she holds a bachelor's degree in economics in this university. Also a PhD in Florence, something that we share with many people here, a place where also academy and excellence is pursued like in this institution. That's why I think it's not a coincidence that we are all here. We all pursue excellence. Her impressive research record includes publications in leading fields and awards, notably the ERC Consolidated Grant and Advanced Grants, that, just to let you know, are the most well-known recognition for scholars pursuing innovative and groundbreaking agendas. And furthermore, she has held diverse academic positions and advisory positions, including full professor in economics here at the university. Without doubt, her deep academic insights into market regulation and energy economics will offer essential analysis during this conversation. And now I think it's the time to welcome you here to join us. So with an applause from the audience. I'm not finished. So now I'm going to give you some insights about how the event is going to develop. So now we're going to have a 35 minutes conversation between the two speakers just to set the frame of the topic. And then, of course, comes the most relevant part of this conversation, which are your questions, okay? So we'll have a Q&A after 35 minutes, and then we will open the floor for you to intervene. Then I will be here as a vivid learner and also as an eternal student listening to this amazing conversation. We look forward to illuminating conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It's such a big honor and a pleasure to be here today back in Carlos III, which, thank you, Carmen, it's truly my home. I am a proud alumni and a proud former colleague of my dear colleagues who are present in this room. I think Carlos III is a clear example that the public university can make a difference. And here we are sharing, as you said before, this public space for a conversation on economics and politics. You know, having this shared space is highly valuable. It's such a pleasure to be able to share this time with you, Carlos, if I may.
Of course.
And let me start with one question. Very recently, we saw you speaking not only in Japanese, but also in Chinese. We're all extremely impressed, as I understand it. Correct me if I'm wrong. I understand you learned it while you were doing your master's at the LSE. Here we are surrounded by master's students in economics and politics. So my first question goes, how on earth did you find the time while doing your master's to learn Japanese in just 1 year? So what is your secret?
Well, you know, actually, it's a pleasure, and thanks a lot for the invitation. I look forward to the conversation afterwards with the students as well. But let's say I wanted to take advantage of all the possibilities that I had back in London at that point. And it was about learning, it was about teaching. I was a teaching assistant also while doing the master, and I had, for the first time in my life, the chance to study Japanese, which was always a dream of mine, and then I took it. But it's true that I stretched it maybe a bit too much, I have to say. But then it came in handy, so you never know.
Of course, I understand that your Japanese colleagues were pretty impressed. Maybe this has, you know, improved the bilateral relationships between Spain and Japan, so it was a great investment you did it.
Exactly, you know, it's all about economic diplomacy in the end. And you know, especially when you go to places where usually culturally or even in terms of language there is a bigger barrier than we can have within the EU, and these elements are, I think, most appreciated, and it's very useful to kind of break the ice and bring people closer together. In the end, economic and diplomatic relations are more than 90% about personal relations.
Of course, excellent. So, Carlos, you are an economista del Estado, senior economist working as in the public administration, but you've always kept a close eye in research, not just as a PhD student at Universidad Autónoma de Madrid, but also as a director of macroeconomic analysis, both at the ministry as well as the fiscal authority. In my case, my career has mostly been academic, both teaching and doing research, but I've always kept a close eye on economic policy. Most of my research is about policy design and assessing the impact of policy, and maybe it's not a coincidence that we have met in various places, not just here, which, by the way, is a big pleasure, but also very recently, before you became minister, I've had the privilege to, together with other economists, to be part of the economic advisory group of the ministry, where we have the privilege, all of us, because I think we all truly enjoy it and learn so much in this conversation with the ministry. Back at that time, it was with your
Nadia.
former colleague, Nadia. You were also present in those meetings before becoming a minister. And it's truly gratifying to be able to spend a whole evening with a minister during 3 and 4 hours talking nonstop about economics at the headquarters of the ministry, where discussions and ideas can truly turn into action. So I wanted to ask you, looking back, given that now we are surrounded by students, how do you remember your training as an economist, and what lessons have stayed through your career from being a student to becoming a minister? Do we learn when we study economics things that become useful as a minister?
Well, I kind of hope that we do. But, you know, it's hard to tell after so many years. Actually, when you said senior economist, that kind of hit me. But okay, I have to accept the evidence. So, you know, to some extent, I think you acquire the skills, and that's the most important part, because then the specific knowledge, bits of it you might use them along the way, others you might forget, but the skills that you acquire, I think, are the ones that stay with you, and particularly for the new generations that might have to keep on adapting to a rapidly changing environment. That might be even more useful for them, because we might have had somehow very linear careers, but they will not.
Yours was exponential, it was not linear.
Well, but to some extent, I think changes are coming faster for them than they did for us.
So, you know, about myself, I like to say that I'm like a duck, you know, because ducks, they can fly, they can swim, and they can walk. They're not the best at any of those elements, but they can actually perform in pretty much every circumstance. And then once you get into something, you can specialize, and it can be useful to not forget about any of the skills that you might be using in the future. You know, it's like when you go to the gym, those of you who do, and you have to work out, do not forget leg day, you know, that's what they used to say. So it's the same, you have to learn how to speak, you have to learn how to properly write, and of course you have to know your analysis, you have to understand the data, be able to graph it, things that in the end might appear easy or even not that important, but then will be essential.
And I'm probably biased, but my sense is that learning economics provides a good training as a duck, because it's a way of thinking, you know, being able to simplify what really matters, being able to understand the interactions between all the elements, being able to understand the mechanisms, the driving forces. And I want to believe that this is something that trains us not just as an economist, but as good professionals in general.
I agree. I mean, some of you might be swans in the end, but ducks are nice.
I have to say, I must confess that I was very moved by your speech when you took office as a minister. It's one of my, preferred speeches that I keep in mind. I think it was the best first person account of, you know, the importance of social mobility and the institutions that make it possible. So I would like to ask you, what do you see the role today of public universities as levers of equal opportunity and social progress? And do you think that this model from which we have all benefited, is it under risk?
Well, for those who did not actually see it, when I took office, basically I did a quick tour about two generations that came before me. Basically, my grandfather, he had to drop out of school when he was 9. But then he was able to send my mom to school. And then my mother was able to send us to a foreign country to be able to study languages and somehow open up new avenues for us. So that, I think, together with the fact that I had the chance to then come back to Spain and be part of the public university in Extremadura, really kind of humbles me whenever I talk about what I have achieved. You know, it's like when you read Sandel and it's his works on meritocracy and how he talks about how far we can go by or with our own achievements, and you have to, again, take into account what led you there. And in my case, I think these are the two pillars. So one is, of course, you're always standing on the shoulders of giants, which are your own family, and then you have to take, of course, or to acknowledge what the public sector, what the welfare state is giving you, and it gave me an education. So again, I did my bit, but it's all part of a system, and I think we're very fortunate, and all of you who are here at one of our top performing universities and a public one are very fortunate, so I encourage you to really take advantage of it, yes.
And I think we have to do our best to make sure that this keeps on continuing being the case, so that the public university has the resources to remain excellent, as Carlos III has been up until today. Before we move on to talking about not economics, but the economy, you know, we are here to talk about the economy as well. I would like to ask you whether you have a message. Many of the students here are about to enter the job market. I understand this is an important period of their lives, a moment of change. So can they be optimistic?
Of course they can. Yes, they have to be optimistic. I think that's a must. I am an optimistic person myself, and I think they have many reasons to be optimistic. They are the best generation ever in our history, so they are more than ready for it. It's our obligation to provide for the best options for them as well, but I think they need this element of self-esteem. They've gone through a very rough time for the past 15 years. They've gone through different crises that were only like once in a generation type of events. But in their time, actually, they had 2, 3, or even 4 of those events. So we have to understand that bit, and they have to, I think, live up to what they really are, and that requires this element of optimism, of looking up, and also, if I may, I'm not very good at giving advice, but if there is one asset that they will have throughout the whole career, is their reputation. It's clearly, I think, the main asset that they will have to take care of as they go from one job to the other. And in these particular times when you have all your social networks, which are in the end your CV, which is posted online on many different formats, be it a video, be it papers or whatever, I would really advise you to treat them properly and very carefully.
Some years ago, we had highly prepared Spaniards live in Spain and work abroad, because here they would not find job opportunities. Now we are surrounded by many foreigners, highly prepared. Do they have good reasons to stay in Spain?
Well, you know, Spain is the place to be. And if there is one, there are many advantages of being a minister. One of them is that you get to meet very interesting people. You've been one of them, Natalia. But what you get from these conversations is actually very insightful. And I had the chance to talk to different companies, international, big multinationals, a month ago in London. And one of the things that they said is that when they look at the different headquarters that they have around the world, the number one in terms of applications for their own staff, highly qualified staff, engineers, is Spain. And this was actually one in Malaga. So again, why is that? Because I think we offer a unique combination. Now we are in a process, we can talk about the Spanish economy, but of really modernizing the Spanish economy. So getting out of a drag that we've had for many decades, which is an economy of low productivity, low wages, small companies. We're getting out of that to be able to really provide for these new generation, which has high qualifications and high skills, so that they can, again, within the best of the environments, have the best life possible, which includes also the best work possible.
So let's talk about the Spanish economy. Spain's
That's
macroeconomic indicators, and I can see why Spanish economic indicators haven't looked this good for a long time. Solid growth, rising employment, a falling deficits, and a transition towards activities, high-value activities, since the international institutions keep on revising the growth figures. Just yesterday, we learned the news from the European Commission, providing the Spanish, the country forecast, 2.9% growth for this year, 2.3%, unemployment falling below 10%, deficit dropping to 2.1%, all far from the major European economies. On Monday, the Financial Times published this article with the headlines, Spain's deficit to fall below Germany's for the first time in 2 decades. Spain has become the fastest growing large developed economies. The tough questions are going to come next, but let me first congratulate
That's
you
just data.
on this. I know, it's just data. And I would like to know what is behind this data. What is behind, what explains this, for the very first time, a Spanish economic miracle? So what is we're talking about channels, drivers, mechanisms. What is behind this success?
You know, there are many elements. If I had to summarize it, I would say that now the growth model is a balanced one. I think that's the fastest way or the quickest way to talk about it. It's balanced because we've been able to, as you said, outgrow our main partners. For the second year in a row, Spain will be the major advanced economy which is leading the pack within the OECD. So that's easier said than done, but that's actually happening. And record figures in terms of job creation as well, more stability in terms of job creation. That comes together, as I said before, with higher wages, an increase in the average wage, which is also on the back of protection of workers, of citizens with respect to the inflation shock, which we had to suffer for the past 3 years. Then it comes also together with this element of fiscal responsibility. As you said, debt and deficit to GDP ratios are decreasing. It comes on the back of positive external sector figures. So very competitive firms in Spain, both in terms of goods, but also in terms of services. Services is tourism, but not just tourism, non-tourism services, which are services of high value added, like IT services, financial services, accounting services. So on that, Spain is actually exporting more than we do in terms of tourism services, which is usually not that well known, because what usually transpires from the Spanish figures that we are a country of tourists. We will be, I think, having around 100 million tourists this year. But we are exporting more in terms of higher value add. So the Spanish economy is modernizing. And then there is another element, which is, of course, the bet for renewables. And this is your area of expertise. So the bet for renewables in Spain, we are a country with no gas, with no oil, but with a lot of sun and a lot of wind. So we have to take advantage of that. And that has, I think, many elements that are explaining what we are witnessing right now. It's a competitiveness edge in terms of energy costs. You see the impact. We can discuss.
We can discuss.
Then it's the element of attraction of investment. You look at foreign direct investment coming to Spain. You have the Financial Times database. Spain is number 2 in the world, number 2, I think just after the US, between 2018 and 2024 in terms of new investment projects in renewables, in the green energy sector. And then, of course, is the element of reducing dependency from other actors in a key sector. So, and an element which is usually not that much discussed, which is the fact that renewable energies are being spread out throughout the whole geography of Spain. And that means that regions such as my region of origin, which is Extremadura, which is usually a region with twice as much unemployment rate as the average, with lower productivity. So now they have a chance, and that chance comes through renewables, where basically industries can come and plug in.
I cannot agree more. I think the energy transition is clearly a lever of economic growth and competitiveness, but let me share with you 2 concerns.
Please.
One is competitiveness. Indeed, we see that many industries that create jobs and exports and economic growth, they are very much dependent on the cost of energy. It's not just labor. For many companies, more than half of the cost is the energy cost. And my concern is that the market design that we have is not truly allowing them to benefit from the truly lower cost of renewable energy. So my concern is that this call for competitiveness, part of it is being lost, because we are paying much of the time a price of electricity that is truly reflecting the cost of burning gas. So I think part of this, leadership in terms of, renewables pushing down the cost of energy and this helping out our companies is being lost because of the market design. And given that you mentioned Extremadura, I'm concerned about Almaraz. I think Spain did an amazing job in putting forward the National Climate and Energy Plan, PENIEC, which has been extremely effective, not least because it was a very firm commitment about this transition towards renewables. And my concern, I want to be honest here, is that if we design to change the path of this transition by keeping Almaraz open longer than it was expected, we are going to lose the credibility of the plan. And I think the value of credibility and commitment should be extremely high. So losing that commitment could be very damaging for the whole transition. So we can keep one power plant up and running, but this might create, through this loss of credibility, a reduction in these investments that bring down the cost of energy for the companies, for the households, and, as you say, create jobs also in Extremadura.
Mm-hmm. Well, 2 very valid points. Let me maybe reply quickly. So the first one is that this drive towards a larger share of renewables within the energy mix, the electricity energy mix, is not done. So As you said, we have a plan up until 2030 now, whereby we've gone from basically 20% of the electricity being generated by renewables to 55, 56 at this point, and it's going up to more than 80 by 2030. So that's an ongoing path, and the path that we've walked so far has meant, this is Bank of Spain analysis, a drop of around 40% in terms of wholesale prices, wholesale electricity prices. So we walk in that path, and around that or along that walk, as I said, the regions where these projects are being developed are having a new opportunity. And to me, this is what we should be looking at. So that's the future for Extremadura. The fact that they're now able to basically produce 600% of the electricity that they consume. Just imagine the potential that this means in terms of attracting big industries, and that's already the case. Absolutely. You have 2 big investments actually being deployed, one in Navalmoral de la Mata, which is electric battery fabric, with I think more than 1 billion euros investment. And then you have another one which is synthetic diamond factory in Trujillo, which is then going to be used, those synthetic diamonds, for the production of chips. So again, this would not be possible without this bet for renewables. So that's the future for those areas.
Absolutely, I cannot agree more. And given that you mentioned these projects as well as both the green and the digital agenda, let me move to talking about Europe. Mm-hmm. Probably some of the students who are here with us don't remember how Europe handled the 2010 financial crisis. It was essentially through austerity that left a deep mark on the following decades and probably beyond, and probably some of the political landscape that we are seeing in Europe these days is also the outcome of those policies. But probably the younger people here in this room, they recall how we came out of the pandemic, the policy response to the pandemic, and it opened up a new economic paradigm also in Europe with the next generation EU funds. Some of the industries that you just mentioned are benefiting from the next generation EU funds. I think it was a clear example of how Europe could come out of a crisis unified and truly relying on public policies, fiscal expansion with a clear mission. In that case was the green and the digital agenda as the levers of growth and more inclusive growth. Yet, these days in Europe, we see a certain retreat from these more Keynesian policies. Even the green agenda is being questioned. So, I mean, not so many years have passed since the pandemic crisis and the success of those policies. And I understand that, you know, the economic situation we are living in Spain is also thanks, to that push that came from Europe. So, why is it that we seem to struggle to learn from history? It was not so long ago. Why is it that already we are rethinking and pushing back on those policies?
Well, there is a lot of inertia. And as you know very well, when we do forecasting in economics, there's always this element of reversion to the trend or to the mean, depending on what we are actually forecasting. But in any case, I think we have a clear example of a best practice or of a success story with Next Generation EU funds. And that's another of the elements that helps explain how we did square the circle in Spain. We had 80 billion in transfers that allowed us to push with investments, and they were actually delivered on the back of a strong structural reform agenda. So it's this combination of investment plus structural reforms which is lifting our potential growth. And that's going to stay there. So it's not just a one-off usual Keynesian approach, but it's an investment-driven fiscal policy that will deliver, especially when combined with the structural reform. So I think this is unbeatable. I mean, to be completely honest, we had the chance to provide for a counter-cyclical fiscal policy during COVID, and that did allow us to basically come out unscarred, and then help or use those investments to modernize the economy. So that's to me that's the perfect combination.
So can we get more of that? Any
Well, we're fighting.
insiders information you can share with us regarding the next EU budget?
Well, we're, I mean, you know, in the end, there is some sort of an asymmetry, because we are saying Europe needs to wake up. Europe needs to be competitive as the US. We need to follow the Draghi agenda or the Letta agenda in terms of the single market. But then Draghi says basically we need 1.3 trillion, or Spanish billion if you want, euros yearly of investment. And at the same time, we're saying, on the other hand, that we want to downsize or to keep the EU budget, and that the national budgets will be constrained because we have EU fiscal rules and sustainability to take care of, and that our domestic private capital markets are not developed enough. So there's no way that we can square that equation without actually understanding that it means further integration, and it means a larger EU budget. And to me, it is obvious, but not to everybody, because then there is discussion around reprioritizing EU funds as well. And so that's part of the big discussions that we will have at the EU level for the next few years, I would say.
Okay, the best of luck, because I think our future truly depends on the success of the European project. Time is over? Really, my goodness, we could have kept on talking and talking non-stop. I had so many questions regarding migration, inflation, housing, AI, climate change. We'll have to redo this again some other time.
No, but then
We count on you, Juan Antonio.
No, we count on the students, because this is the next. So now many of you were wondering what I was doing here. So that's the main reason. I was here just to take. Ah, okay.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Good.
You
So
see, I have nothing to say.
you follow the orders, right?
You can see who is the boss here.
So quickly, because I think it's also very interesting. We want to hear them,
Of
right?
course, yeah.
But one question that I think is probably in the back of our minds, because we are all concerned about that, and so are you. One of the biggest problems that is flying is the housing problem. So I understand macroeconomic data are booming, growth. Sometimes I feel that the public perception about this macro data doesn't truly translate, doesn't reach society to the extent that it should. So I wonder, is this growth being evenly distributed in the society? Is there not, the crisis that we have regarding housing prices, and particularly the younger people? Doesn't it stop us from fully perceiving this good economic data when it comes to our day-to-day life?
You know, I think there are two elements here. So the first one is that this is University of Michigan analysis, if I remember correctly, that since the pandemic, there is a disconnect between the macro and the sentiment. So before that, you could actually explain sentiment by just looking at labor market, consumption, stock market data, inflation. But now that's not there anymore. So then this is not just about Spain. That's actually happening everywhere. And there are many reasons behind that. And one of them, and I'm sure we can discuss about media as well, is that usually there is a bias towards negative news. And I think this is pretty much everywhere as well. I can understand the clickbait element. You always tend to have the temptation to go for the bad news instead of the good news. But I keep on saying that good news are also news. To some extent, we should not forget about that. And even, I think there are psychological studies saying that if you're pessimistic, you appear to be more clever. So, of course, when you're an optimist, people say, he doesn't know anything about the matter, because you have to be negative and pessimist. But in any case, I think that's one thing, the disconnect that is happening since the pandemic, which we're not really able to match. And it's a lot also of our responsibility, I think, in terms of communicating. And what we're doing for our communication is that actually we introduce this bit of novelty of methodological change in the way that we do the outlook, the macro outlook, now we've linked this to micro analysis as well, to indicators on inequality, on poverty, so that every time that we talk about employment or GDP, it is actually linked with this poverty or inequality indicators. So we can see directly how things are evolving together and how a better performance in terms of the labor market has implications. And I did present the data yesterday, and we saw, for example, that for Spain, just to give you one figure, this inequality indicator, which is the gap between the 80-20 percentile, so the 20th richest percentiles, the difference in terms of income with respect to the 20th poorest, so the ones on the left of the distribution, this 80-20 indicator. So Spain, between 2018 and 2024, was a country where it did come down by the largest amount in the whole Eurozone. That actually happened on the back of a very strong growth performance. So the two things are linked, and we might be, because you're growing with a purpose, which is the purpose of actually getting that growth to the bulk of the income distribution through the lowering of inequality. But then, and I would come to the last point, there is a reality now, especially for the younger cohorts, which is affordable housing. And that is a key issue, which is the most pressing issue for the government as well. And there we can have a specific discussion on housing if you want, but one of the key elements is the lack of investment after the global financial crisis. So there was, just to give you a figure, the construction sector during the housing bubble in Spain reached around 13% of our GDP. Now it's 6%. So I think maybe the steady state is actually somewhere in.
So what is the role
between.
of public policies there? Why is it not being more built? Public housing as a lever for this lack of investment into housing
That's exactly what we put in on
down.
the table. It's a huge agenda of public investment in rebuilding the public housing stock, at least to the level of the best performing countries in the EU, and that requires, of course, huge investment, and there's also the housing cycle, so that requires an element of construction, of making permits somehow more flexible, lower the time that it takes to initiate the construction of those buildings. And in the end, there's also, of course, all the elements related to the specific market failures that we have now, which have to do also with, of course, platforms, tourism-related housing possibilities. So there is a lot going on now. It's not just investment, it's also regulation. But we're trying to, again, not leave any stone unturned in terms of providing for relief, particularly for the youngsters.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Carlos. Do you want to take the questions to the floor now?
Yeah, so thank you. Anyway, so the conversation is not over. The thing is that now we are opening to other voices. Please write your questions, also say your name and the master students that you represent. So who wants to ask? We have a question there.
Okay, thanks for having me. So my name is Tianyu San. I'm from China. I'm studying the Master in Economy, Development and Growth. So Mr. Minister, so I was really surprised because Madame Natalia said you speak Chinese because I'm from China, so I know how hard Chinese and Japanese is, so I'm really surprised. So
I don't speak Chinese. I love Asian languages. I did study Japanese, and when I went to China last week, I tried to do an introduction in Chinese. I said I tried. I think I managed because people understood me, but it is really a nice language, I have to say.
Okay, so in my opinion, the trade connection between Spain and China are getting stronger and stronger, but however, I think recently the European Union and China has many trade conflicts. I will give you some examples. For example, last year, European Union imposed import tariff on the Chinese electric vehicles. And I think also recently the Chinese government or like China has a conflict with the Netherlands about a semiconductor company. So my question is, So first, how do you weave the trade relation between Spain and China? And second, so how can you manage the trade relation between China and Spain under the pressure and constraint from European Union? Thanks.
Excellent question.
Yeah, it's a good question, yes. So first, I would say we have to acknowledge that the world trade is getting more fragmented, and we have, I think, a very good proof of it when we look at the increase in the average tariff rate across the world, particularly from the US since the beginning of this American administration. And within that context, again, if we come back to the EU, we have to take a step forward and really understand that if we want to be a key player, we have to sit at those negotiating tables with cards in our hands. And that means going ahead with our strategic autonomy investments, industries, and bets. And that means a lot of investments. We were discussing that before. And that means also, to the extent that we see that there is unfair competition, protect our industries. And this is the context in which we are, I think, extending our hand to all trading partners that want to keep on integrating with the EU, but again, trying to protect our companies, our workers in the process. When it comes to the US, again, we tried very hard to avoid an increase in tariffs because we understand that that's the strongest relationship that we have nowadays. It's our closest partner. Actually, on a daily basis, I think it's 4.6 billion euros across the Atlantic in terms of trading goods and services. It's a treasure. We need to protect that. But aside from that, we need to be realistic about the current situation. And again, take a step forward. And that means engaging with all relevant partners. Of course, China is the second biggest economy in the world, or the first, depending on actually which indicator you look at. So we need to engage with the Chinese authorities, engage with Chinese companies, understanding also that the relationship is very asymmetric, very unbalanced. There is a huge, in this case, surplus from the Chinese side. We need to be able to have deeper entrance of our companies, of our products into the Chinese market. It's a huge 1.4 billion people market, and for this purpose, or in order to be able to do that, you need to keep on engaging with the Chinese authorities. And in many sectors, you know, there was this, which is completely wrong, this say, which was usually that Europe regulates, China produces, and the US innovates. That's not true. China is a leading country in many technologies, and that's another thing that we have to acknowledge. And we have also, in that sense, understand that there is need to attract investment. But for that investment to be productive, it needs to come together with, of course, value added locally, to drag also production from the local value added chain, from the local producers, to produce jobs also locally or domestically, to have technological transfer as well. So there is a fully fledged strategic autonomy, economic security agenda around which this engagement with the main partners is necessary. And another one is, for example, hopefully we will ratify the agreement with Mercosur before the end of the year, next month in December. That's another key area for the EU to go ahead in terms of further integrating. And again, it's providing our companies with more opportunities to scale up. So engaging is always the way to go.
Okay, so let's go for the next question. So we have Agil there. Please stand up and also show questions, because then we'll have more space for discussion. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the introduction, and also I wanted to thank the ponentes. There has been raised really interesting questions and therefore very interesting answers. My name is Ines Romero. I'm a student from a Master in Sustainable Development and Global Governance from here, obviously, from the Carlos III. And actually, I had two questions, but I understand time is precious. So, of course, Minister, you're free to answer whichever you want or both of them. It depends on which one you prefer. The first question being, I remember when I was an economics student, always thinking, of these theories that I'm learning in microeconomics and everything, I don't think they make sense because they are always ceteris paribus and only considering one variable and not the whole mix of variables that actually happen and occur in real life. So the first question would be, do you really use macroeconomic theories in the way that you studied them, or if not, how then? Or how do you use this theoretical knowledge in your field? And in the second question, or the only one, depends on your choice. The second question would be regarding the housing problem, an issue we have here in Spain as well as you said, in other countries. At least here in Spain, there has been applied a measure that it's called Bono Alquiler Joven, which is a young youth rental subsidy that gives funds to youth people, to young people for rental. The question is, I think it is obvious that if the money from the government is going to the tenants, not the landowners, but the homeowners are free to raise their housing prices or their rents. So is this a human mistake? Was not this a human mistake, and was this on purpose? Or, I mean, is this reasoning not, at the ministry level? I cannot understand how this measure was applied. And I wanted to say that I am not in favor of any kind of war. I'm just curious, and I want to know this if it's possible and in a really peaceful way. Thank you so much.
Peaceful for sure. It's something that indeed we learn in principles of economics 101, but it's not the professor's role, but the minister's role. So why do we have these sort of policies in the housing market?
Sure. I will begin with the first question, and I'll take both, of course. So I think of course, you will apply what you're learning, but maybe not exactly the way that you think you will. Why I say this? Because in the end, not only because most of these models are either partial equilibrium models or with huge assumptions that are not real-life assumptions, but because in the end, there is another element aside economic policy, which is political economy, which has a lot of influence on how you're able to, in the end, take decisions and pass laws or provide for specific policy designs. And that's this political economy element is the bridge between the academia and politicians, because that's the way where we meet in a world of second or third or fourth best many or oftentimes. And we have to learn to navigate in this environment and make the best out of it. So you can think that there is a specific, a best optimal design of a policy, but then real world actually has to, or leads you towards trying a second best. And then there is another important element, and I link it with your second question, which is the evaluation of the impact of the policies that we put in on the field, and that is a key element for us to be able to learn from mistakes when there are mistakes, or to be able to reinforce policies that are actually working. And sometimes what you're looking at is you identify a specific market failure, for example, with access of young people to housing, be it via the rental market or owning. And one element that we saw, for example, was that you are starting or beginning your professional career, so you don't have time to accumulate enough savings to be able to put that upfront for purchase, because you know that the loan to value is usually around 80%. So the bank gives you 80% of the value. You need to be able to save for that extra 20%, but you're still too young. You might not have the luck to have parents who can actually bail you out with this 20%. So what we've done is to put public guarantees from ECO, from the public bank, promotional bank, for youngsters to be able to actually take that step. So in the end, we're not providing for a fully fledged solution to all the problems. So we're trying to target a specific market failure on that front. It's like you're talking about subsidies for rentals. Those are targeted to a specific segment. So in the end, the pass-through to rents, I don't think it's going to be one-to-one in any case, and there might be a specific bias towards benefiting youngsters. But again, that's why it's so important to have a constant evaluation of what we're doing, because we sometimes we really are navigating in uncharted territories, and particularly after the pandemic, where everything has completely changed. And I'm sure all the professors have had to revisit their textbooks, because many of those theories actually are not holding, or are barely holding by a thread.
Okay, so we have more questions. So one there, yeah.
Hi, my name is Victoria Calcaterra. I'm from Uruguay, and I'm from the same master as her, Sustainable Development and Global Governance. So going more like to the practical field, the real life, I think it was just 1 year and a few months that you were a minister, and we had the little crisis of the blackout in Spain. And I wanted to ask you, as the minister, like 3 takeaways that you got from it. Like, it could be a good policy that you learned that helped neutralize the effects, or maybe how you were surrounded, like your team, or what are your key takeaways from it?
Thank you.
That you can also answer.
Shall I?
Oh, of course.
I think a key lesson is security of supply is a public good. So we are surrounded by professors. So we need to support security of supply, because when we don't have it, then this creates a major economic damage. I don't think the lessons was this was the fault of renewables. Now we are starting to understand the conclusions of the report that is being drafted in Europe, following a very careful research. And it was not the fact that in Spain we are leading the way in terms of renewable generation. There was a major cascade of different events that should for sure be avoided. One of the ways to doing that is to allow renewables to contribute to the security of supply, and this can be done. And this can be done through proper regulation that allows renewables to provide security of supply. So I think we have to learn out of the blackout. It's a unique opportunity to learn as to how to make progress in the energy transition. There were many nitty-gritty details and technicalities super relevant that we learned from the engineers, but I think there's many economic lessons that we can get out of this crisis. And one of them is that regulators need to be well equipped with highly specialized personnel. They need to have the resources to be able to not act ex post, but rather ex ante, to avoid these sort of situations that part of them probably could have been avoided through regulatory decisions. That's my point of view, and I now lead the minister to give his.
I mean, what I can add, if I may, are 2 different elements. So one is one on which we are working as well, which is investment, for example, in terms of batteries of accumulation, so that, again, we're building buffers to be able to sort out these tension problems, or tension problems like the ones that we had. Self-consumption as well, to be able to work ahead. Big investments are coming on that front as well. And if I may, there's also a positive lesson, because there's always room for positive lessons. And the positive lesson is that we basically put the system to the biggest stress test that there is, which is blackout. And the system actually managed to come back fully in a very short time span. So again, that was, to me, also, as I look at the economic side of it, the only way to minimize the economic impact. So basically, overnight, the system came back. So we managed not only to avoid any bigger social concern or impact, but also economic cost. And I think also that is thanks to renewables. Again, there are many elements to be learned from this, and we're working on them, of course.
Okay. So we have 2 more questions, quick ones. Okay. And
Good evening, Minister. I'm Francesco Batters, a European citizen from Italy. And my question is that across the EU, about 90% of solar panels are actually bought from China. And about 60 to 80% of the green technologies manufacturing is also part of China. My question is, do you think that this dominance in green technology will eventually in the future translate also in a dominance of regulatory power, limiting the power of the EU in the so-called Brussels effect? Thank you.
Well, they're very difficult questions.
This is an exam, didn't we tell you?
No, Jesus. Well, you know, we talked about China before, and they did their homework in terms of really building strong capabilities in these future industries or strategic industries, and throughout the whole value chain. And they've done that, and it's actually a source of strength at this point for them, and that should also tell us a lesson going forward in terms of the need to really bulletproof the way that we will look at strategic autonomy, because now, you know, previously when we looked at the multilateral system, we might have been a bit naive, but I think it was a good thing, because we were thinking that being interdependent actually meant that risks were lowered, because any attack or any attempt at really strengthen our positions via these chokehold points would be to the detriment of everyone. So the only way forward was a win-win situation in a sort of national equilibrium of really engaging into further integration. But that's not the case anymore. And so we're not that naive. We've learned, and I think in that sense, we need to walk 2 avenues. So the first one is building our own strengths within the EU, but not for the purpose of using them against anyone, but for the purpose of reducing the risks of not being able to, for example, provide for the continuity of the production of cars. We've seen that with the chips case. It can actually come very quickly, and then it can disrupt completely the production of an essential good, such as cars or others. So that's one element. And the other one is to not forget about the need to keep on engaging with close allies and partners. That's why we have to keep on going to seal in the deal with Mercosur. We have to go and go ahead with the deal with Indonesia. We have to go ahead with the deal with India. We have to go ahead and engage with China. As I said before, we need to walk and work on both directions.
okay. So one last question by a student. So go ahead.
So I'm Paula. I come from 2 associations. First, from Sonora, that is like the university radio, and from Estudeco, that is the economics association of the campus in Getafe. So from the 3CM. And we want to ask you, because we were talking about the next generation funds,
Yes.
and the increase in the EU budget. So that given that this significant part of the increase in the EU budget will repay the next generation funds, how we prevent this repayment from constraining future investment capacity from the EU, and also considering that the EU cannot rely in common debt exceptionally forever. And also, how can we avoid this fiscal pressure to lead to austerity measures that are going to constrain member states' social policy? Thank you.
That was a brilliant question. So let me try and structure my answer. So I said before that we need a bigger EU budget because we need big investments that need to come from the private, but also with a push, particularly in some strategic public good areas, EU genuinely public goods, such as, for example, energy interconnection. So there are elements. We've seen that very clearly with defense, it did happen very quickly. So we, European Commission did put on the table very rapidly 150 billion euros of EU debt. I mean, in the course of 2 months since the security crisis was put on the table. So again, we need to engage in this discussion for a good purpose. It's not about increasing debt. It's about providing for these EU public goods. I think that's, for me, the way to look at it. But you asked about the repayment of the debt. Of course, that's an essential part of the discussion on the next budget, how we structure that repayment. And just to give you an idea, the first proposal from the European Commission, what it includes is a front loading of interest payments of next generation EU debt. By just having a linear repayment instead of a front loading one, you can actually free up for the next budget around 100 billion, which is a huge fiscal space to be able to increase investments or to cover for key policy priorities like agricultural policy or cohesion policy as well. So again, I think there is space if we want to sit down and discuss these elements whereby we can find this balance between having fiscal sustainability, of course. I mean, the amount of EU debt is negligible when you look at it in terms of GDP. And again, even more so when you look at the investment needs. So there is space to keep on growing and having a more integrated EU, because more, I think a bigger EU budget also genuinely leads to a more integrated EU, which is the way forward.
Europe is the way forward. This was an extremely enriching conversation. Let me thank you for making us feel so close to you. I think this is an amazing asset. Carlos, please, it's very precious. I think we're in the best hands, so I wish you all the very best. Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you.
So thank you, everyone. Now there is a cocktail waiting for you outside just to celebrate this great moment. And thank you, everyone, for being so invested. See you next year.